Okay, I am live. Okay, looks like the bandwidth here at the Hilton Hotel in Miami is sufficient to do a hangout on air. So far, there is one viewer. It's me. Okay, that's all right. The fewer, the better, I say. Okay, let's see. How's the volume over here? Pop and bump that up. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Testing. 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 Ah, I hear myself in the background. Where am I hearing that? Mm-hmm. Right here. Good. I'll turn that off. Beautiful. Okay. Now let's go over here to the Airline Pilot Guide Live page, see if that works. Hello, hello. Okay, it's probably got about a minute lag. Latency is not my friend. Okay, do that. And I'm going to turn that on. All right, now I have a full screen chat. Now I need to tweet this out. Excuse me. Hello. Hello. Should be louder. Hello. Testing. Bump that up. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello. Okay, checking my levels. Um, Come on, come on. And that's not accelerate. So I'm going to have to do it from here. Okay. 13. Stop. If you're watching this, by the way, and I haven't had a chance to trim the video from the beginning, I'm still trying to do some prep work here. I'm in Miami, Florida, at the Hilton Hotel downtown, and I'm just about ready to hit the record button and start this show. Let's see. Back here. There we go. Get down to the smallest possible size to save processing power on my computer. Not feeling a little under the weather, actually. Okay, what I need to do is tweet. So I'm going to go over here to tweet. those thumbnails. Weird. Just using that. Okay. We'll see what happens. Zero viewers. How can that be? I'm viewing it. That's strange. Okay. Well, good. That way I won't feel. Whatever. Okay. Put that on. And so I knew that was going to happen. All right, how do I stop those sounds? Hey, John. Let's see. Let me turn off the sound here. I heard a little pulp sound. Okay, well, you, sir. Oh, 9 people are here now. Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I'm about to start recording episode 109. I'm hoping most of you know who the heck I am. I'm Captain Jeff Nielsen. I do this little thing I call the Airline Pilot Guy. I am not on CNN. I am not on Fox News Channel or any other cable news network or affiliate, happily. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Okay, here we go. Not feeling very well. All right. Airline Pilot Guy, episode number... Airline Pilot Guy? Airline Pilot Guy, episode 109 is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/airlinepilotguy. Over 150,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
Flight 209, you're clear for takeoff. Roger. Point 9. Roger.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from my side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 318 in the Hilton Hotel in downtown Miami. In this episode, yes, more about the missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. We're going to talk about an airplane, a Delta jet that lost part of its wing, and a panel actually from the wing, and an aborted takeoff by an US Airways Airbus 320 in Philadelphia last week. So sit back and relax. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 109 is ready for pushback. Well, hello, and again, welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. I'm Captain Jeff. Many of you already know that. If you're new to the show, welcome. I mentioned my Studio 318. That's what I call my hotel room because I try to record my show while I'm on the road on layover. This is day 2 of a 4-day trip. Yesterday I was in Orlando. I'd planned to record the show yesterday, but had troubles with the bandwidth in the hotel room. I was getting good bandwidth, but for some reason wasn't able to start a Hangout on air. I finally gave up. I wasn't feeling very well either. You may notice, for those of you who have listened to me before, my throat is, or my voice sounds a little bit different, and that's because I'm suffering from some kind of a upper respiratory thing, and I apologize ahead of time if I have to kind of turn my head and cough during the show so that I don't cough into the microphone. But I'm gonna trudge onward here and get this show, at least the first half of the show, recorded today here in Miami. Tomorrow we're supposed to go here from here up to Kennedy in New York, and then back here. So I'll be back again tomorrow afternoon at the Miami Hilton Hotel downtown. And that is all I have to say about that. So before we get on with the news, let's do what some of you consider the most favorite part of the show, and that, of course, is talking about the Coffee Fund. And the Coffee Fund, you say, Captain Jeff? What the heck is that? Well, that's my excuse for playing the song. Coffee, I love tea. The Java Jive. I love the Java Jive and it loves by the Ink Spots. Coffee and tea. Now, the Coffee Fund is my way, or your way, actually, to help support me in the show. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. If you want to find out about the Coffee Fund and how you can donate to help with defray some of the costs of the show, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. Now, I would like to publicly thank several folks who have generously donated since the last show. And I'm going to go over here and read from my list of fine folks who are supporting my caffeine addiction fund. And looks like it's Raymond, Neville, Timothy, Glenn, Nicholas, Anthony, Danielle, and Gavin. Thank you, all of you, for your kind donations to my Coffee Fund Classic. And then also I'd like to mention those who have signed up via the Patreon site. And that would be Tammy Joy, Ken, and Bob. Thanks for supporting me and becoming my patron via patreon.com. You can find out more, again, as I said, by heading over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. Okay. Now, let's go back over here to my sound playing application and click on that, and the ink spots will slowly fade out. All right, it's time for news. Okay, well, let's see. Where should we start? Are there any airplanes that have gone missing from radar for more than a week and less than 2? Yeah, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. Now, I'm going to start by saying I am getting sick and tired of watching these cable news outlets and even national outlets, but I think the cable news outlets are most guilty of this, and I guess I'm kind of guilty for, watching it, hoping that I'm going to glean some kind of a nugget of information that's going to help me determine what happened to this flight. Early on, I'll give credit to these news organizations, they went out and sought people that would have relevant information, experts that were actually experts, actual pilots, especially the ones that they ended up finding who were actually Boeing 777 pilots with a lot of experience on the airplane and a lot of experience with international flying of the Boeing 777. Kudos to you for doing that, CNN and Fox News Channel, etc. But I'm a little dismayed when I start seeing people, they're calling aviation experts that are not aviation experts. For instance, just before I started the show here, let me give you a for instance. CNN calls this lady, I'm sure she's a very nice woman, Renee Marsh. She is the aviation news correspondent. Okay, so I went, well, what is her experience? Why is she considered an aviation expert? Well, she's not done anything in aviation, as far as I can tell in her bio here. She when she was in Albany, she gained recognition covering major stories in New York state politics and for her investigation into an underground society operating out of public bathrooms in the capital region. She was also a reporter and anchor at KTAL in Shreveport, Louisiana. Okay, why are you considered an aviation expert? Another example, Fox News Channel. I like watching Fox News Channel. I watch both CNN and Fox News Channel because I try to get a balanced reflection of the news and opinions and editorials, etc. And when I see this guy, and I've seen him on there several times on Fox News, and let's see, his credentials for being an aviation expert and can talk about what goes on in the cockpit of a Boeing 777 flying international and talking about flight management computers and ACARS systems and everything else. Let's see. He was a former Navy SEAL. Okay, that's great, but I don't see what that has to do with flying airliners. He was a former air marshal, I believe. Okay, well, that means that he flew in the first class section of an airplane many times domestically. But does that give you, I'm asking you out there right now, I know I have listeners who are frequent flyers, multi-million milers. You spend a lot of time in airplanes, okay? But you're on the other side of the cockpit door. And one of the reasons why you listen to the show is to hear information from somebody like me who is on the cockpit side of the cockpit door. And I know a little bit about flight management computers, about ACARS systems, about transponders, about what happens in an airplane, etc. So why is this guy considered an aviation expert? I'm seeing people from the TSA, I'm seeing people from national correspondent, security correspondent, etc., etc. Okay, well, talk about something you know something about, but don't start pontificating and coming up with all these wild stories and then just basically putting out inaccurate information. I'm pulling my hair out, literally, hearing things like, oh, the last transmission from the cockpit was, all right, good night. And then people are saying, oh, that was some kind of a code for something is wrong, something's not quite right. No, it's not. When we're told to switch frequencies, we can say adios, we can say, Acme Flight 403, switching to whatever frequency you just gave me. Good night, take care, whatever. All right, good night. That's not unusual. There is nothing unusual about that. There's no sort of a code being transmitted there that for somebody to figure out. No, it's just that's normal communications. The timeline. Well, the transponder was turned off right before this last transmission. Well, now they're finding, well, it may or may not have been. We don't really know the exact timeline. Early on, heard a lot of people saying, the transponder, why? I don't understand. Why is it that pilots are able to turn off the transponder? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about transponders. I'm sure by now you may know a little bit about them, but just in case. The transponder is an electronic device. Its transponder is a portmanteau.
Portmanteau.
Portmanteau. Thank you. which means that it's short for two words, part of one word and part of the other word. Transmitter dash responder. So it's transmitter responder, transponder, sometimes abbreviated XPDR, XPNDR, TPDR, or TP. It's an electronic device that produces a response when it receives a radio frequency interrogation. In the early days of radar, they had something called primary radar, and we still do have primary radar, which is, you've seen those radar antennas that are swirling around, the classic antennas that you see spinning around at high rates of speed. That's a radar antenna. And what it does, it sends out an impulse. We use them to look at weather and that kind of thing. It sends out a radio wave impulse, and then as soon as it hits something like rain when we're using weather radar, or something solid like the aluminum or metal skin of an airplane, that's reflected and it goes back to the radar dish. And then based on that information, how long it took to come back, etc., the primary radar can determine the range of the airplane. And it's not really designed to give elevation information, especially civilian radars. Military radars are a little bit better about giving elevation information, but that's not what they were really designed for. And especially the further you get from the radar antenna, the less accurate the information is that you'll get using primary radar. Okay, so that's why some of these reports about, well, the radar said it went up to 45,000 feet, and well, I'm jumping ahead, sorry. Let me continue on about the transponder. So primary radar is what we used initially when we had radar technology. Okay, back in, let's see, World War II, British and American military developed something called identification friend or foe, IFF, to help differentiate between friendly and enemy aircraft on radar. Actually, it helped you determine that the person that you're interrogating is actually friendly. If it didn't return that response, then you could assume that the thing, or it was not a friendly. But that kind of developed into something we call secondary surveillance radar, which is, in addition to the primary beam sent out, you have a secondary impulse sent by the radar antenna. And if the airplane is equipped with a transponder, this electronic device, it will return an amplified signal back to that radar antenna. Okay, and in that returned impulse, it gives specific information about the identification of the airplane, the altitude of the airplane, the call sign of the airplane, the speed of the airplane, etc. Lots of good information in there. That's secondary surveillance radar. So when a transponder is turned off, either switched off or for whatever reason loses power, the secondary surveillance radar does not get that signal information anymore. By the way, I've talked about this before on the show. Traffic Collision Avoidance System, TCAS, uses the signal from secondary transponders, if it's a Mode S transponder, to not only send out information to radar interrogation, but also if another Mode S transponder is within range, they'll kind of talk to each other. And so that's how I know when I'm flying along and I look at my display, I can see whether there's an airplane above me or below me, approximately the bearing, approximate range, and exact altitude information. And the TCAS system uses that information to determine whether or not an airplane is kind of going to be a threat as far as collision threat, and if so, then it will also give a resolution advisory to kind of direct the airplanes in a vertical plane to help avoid hitting each other. So don't want to go into too much detail about that, but a transponder basically is an enhanced radar device. It's a box, it's electronic equipment that is aboard the airplane. Okay, and sometimes you'll hear, we squawk a code. Squawk, I'm sure you've heard of squawks. That's a squawk. Oh, wait a minute. No. That's me trying to be funny. Sorry. That's the term that we use when we are assigned an aircraft transponder code. So they may say something like squawk 7421, and that means to select a certain transponder code or They may ask me what I'm squawking, etc. And then you've also heard that when we have a communications failure, we squawk 7600. If we have some other issues going on, an emergency for perhaps 7700, we would squawk. Okay, so there's a transponder, that piece of equipment. Why do, oh, the other thing that we use the transponder for at a lot of airports around the world is for ground-based, I think they call it airport ground surveillance radar. I'm not sure the specific name for it. But now, before I push back from the gate, we turn the transponder on, and that gives the people in ground control, they're in the control tower, information about my airplane, what my call sign is, etc. So that information, they can track airplanes now at a lot of these big airports around the country and around the world on the ground, and that helps, especially in low visibility situations, helps them sort out traffic on the ground, etc. So we need to turn that on. But there are times when, if you're at the gate, you don't want to have it on because that's going to be cluttering up the radar screen, right? So you get to the gate, one of the items on our checklist is to turn the transponder to standby, which is essentially turning it off. It's not emitting that information as it's being interrogated. It's not returning any information, so that doesn't clutter up the radar screen for ground control. Okay, so you can't just leave it on all the time. What's another reason for turning off your transponder? Well, if you have an electrical fire, you don't want a device on that you can't turn off. Okay, it's just, pilots like to be able to turn things off because having a fire aboard an airplane is as dangerous or more dangerous than a fire on a boat. Probably more dangerous, I would say. At least on a boat, you can jump out and get into the water. In an airplane, not so much. Okay, so those are the reasons why we should and are able to turn off the transponder. Okay. The other thing that we've been hearing a lot about is ACARS. Okay, and that can be that's an acronym, and it either stands for Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, or ARINC, ARINC, which is another acronym, Communications Addressing and Reporting System. AirInc is the outfit, the company that provides these the data transfer of communications between airplanes and companies and air traffic control and other things. Okay, so that, as we have learned by watching the news, is a system that is basically our smartphone or tablet device in the cockpit. It's a communications device. What do we do with an ACARS? Well, it's a system that allows flight information to be transmitted between individual aircraft and a company host computer. And I pulled up some information from the Acme, the airplane that I fly, about all the different things that it does. And it does transmit automatic messages, by the way. Many of you asked about how we get paid. We get paid by when we block out and when we block in. So when the airplane backs out from the gate, the front door is closed, the brakes are released, all the cargo doors are closed, the rotating beacon is turned on, that generates a signal. That signal is sent through the ACARS system to our company computer. That's our out time. When we lift off, there's a device on the nose wheel, the nose gear, that senses when the airplane is now not on the ground anymore. So that's our takeoff time. That's our off time. When we land, when the nose wheel contacts the runway, the strut is compressed, the device that determines that the airplane is now on the ground, ground sensing, sends a on signal to the company's computers. And then when we arrive at the gate and the beacon is turned off, the front door is open, depending on the sensors on that particular airplane, that generates an in time. So it's all automated. Those are some of the automated signals. Many airplanes have engines, whether they're Pratt & Whitney's or Rolls-Royce or whatever company it is that manufactures the engines, that are tied into the ACARS system that automatically, at certain intervals, will send information or data about what's happening with the engines. All kinds of different parameters can be sent. Early on, watching again these news outlets. They talk about the fact that, well, the Rolls-Royce engines were transmitting this data. Well, no, the engines weren't really transmitting the data. The engines were sending data to the Aircraft Communications Addressing Reporting System, ACARS. The ACARS was actually sending the data. Okay, so don't get in your head that those engines out on the wings or in the tail of the airplane are actually the things that are sending out data. They're not. They're sending data to the central communication center. Let's see, what are some of the other things that we use the ACARS for? We receive messages for our fuel reports in many places, how the fuel was loaded, our fuel service record. We receive our weight and balance data, the data that we use based on how many passengers we have, what the center of gravity is, which is a setting that we have to set, what our trim setting is going to be for that takeoff weight and performance, power settings, that kind of stuff. That's all a report that we receive through ACARS. And then we also have a little printer that we can send. We can hit the button that says print, and then it goes and prints on the ACARS printer. Okay, so we receive a lot of information from that system in addition to sending it. Before we leave, we're trying to decide what runway we're going to be using for takeoff and what runway we're going to be using or they're using for landing at our destination. We can go ahead and go to the Automatic Terminal Information Service, or the Airport Terminal Information Service, the ATIS system that you can listen to also over the radio if you're within range. But if I'm sitting in Atlanta and I'm going to New York, I'm well out of range to receive that information. But I can either request the ATIS on the ACARS box and get that information in digital form, or I can use my cell phone and put in the information for New York's LaGuardia Airport and figure out what runway they're using based on the way the winds are blowing. We receive information. Let's see. I'm looking at this schematic of all the different pages of information. It's basically a computer, and we can communicate with our maintenance coordinator. If we have a maintenance write-up, we send that via the ACARS system, and they send us information back. With flight control, my dispatcher, I can communicate with my dispatcher kind of like text messages. They can send messages to me. Just received one today coming down from New York or going from Orlando up to New York. My dispatcher was giving me relaying information about turbulence reports at certain altitudes, and that gives us a heads up. If we're going to divert, we can communicate that information to flight control, and then they can give us updated weather reports and runway conditions and such for the alternate or divert airport. We also use the ACARS system to determine what gate we're going to. We ask our flight attendants how many wheelchairs, how many unaccompanied minors do we have on today's flight. And they'll say, well, two wheelchairs and one unaccompanied minor, and we need a carry-off. So we put that information into our ACARS box and hit send. And then within a few seconds or minutes, we get a response, and it tells us what gate we're assigned and that kind of information. And what gate we may end up going out of, if we're going to switch airplanes or whatever in a big crew base. For oceanic clearances, that's another way to get it. Oh, pre-departure clearances. We used to, and sometimes we still do if they don't have the ability or the modernity to use the ACARS system to receive clearances. Then we have to do it the old way, which is using our radio. We call a certain frequency and we say, hey, this is Acme Flight 403 to Miami, clearance on request. And then they give us our clearance, our flight clearance. Now we just put in our flight number and where we're going, and we hit a button and request our clearance, and then we receive this information in text form. We usually print it out, and we have that information from air traffic control that we're allowed to go and what we're cleared, and we make sure that we match that clearance information with the information that we've entered into the computer for our flight. So that is the ACARS system. Now let's get back to this scenario, this Malaysia Flight 370. Some people say, well, how do you turn the transponder off? Well, you go over here to this little knob and you turn it off. How do you turn the ACARS system off? Well, it's pretty easy actually. You can go to a menu item, and depending on the kind of system you have, and click on the little checkbox that says I don't want the ACARS to use VHF radio information, nor do I want it to use satellite information. So you're basically disconnecting this from the network, the satellite network. Good article. I'll put a link in it in the show notes. A link to it in the show notes that kind of explains this whole satellite system and pinging and stuff. You know, our cell phones. It basically uses the analogy of a cell phone. The satellite uplink system that Malaysia Flight 370 uses and many or most international flights use it's a satellite uplink, and instead of using ground-based radio, the airplane that I fly doesn't have a satellite capability. It uses antennas on a system of ground-based radio communications to communicate with that ACARS box in my airplane. But on the 777, all you have to do is go to one of the pages, manage, and uncheck the box that says VHF and uncheck the box that says satellite. So these satellites up there, just like your cell phone, you know that whether you are using an application or texting or using your telephone, that your cell phone is actually communicating with all the different cell towers out there. Periodically, the cell tower will send a signal to your phone. Remember the old days when we used to have the edge system, and if you got your phone kind of close to a speaker, you start making that that weird noise. Now, not so much. If you have a more modern phone using 4G and LTE, you don't hear that noise anymore. It's only when it downgrades itself to the older system, the Edge, GSM Edge system, that you start hearing that noise. But that's the phone communicating with the cell towers. Okay, the cellular towers need to know where your phone is so that if you do receive a call, it knows where to send the call. It knows what cell you're in. Same thing with the satellite system. It sends out roughly each hour a signal, a ping, to the unit on the airplane to see if that airplane or that unit on the airplane is still there, it's still on, still responding. Excuse me, to signals. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the unit on the airplane is going to send any information back. All it's going to do is let the satellite know that it's still there. Okay, so that's why, you know, you're seeing some of the reports that the satellite system was receiving pings up to like 6 or 7 hours after the disappearance. And then there's a good article about why they think that the last known position of the airplane is on this arc, based on where that satellite is parked. They know what satellite it was communicating with, and based on the trigonometry and the strength of the signal that the satellite was receiving from the unit on the airplane, it can kind of determine with an arc about what the distance is from the satellite, and kind of based on the trigonometric relation, you know, what the arc is. So you remember those red lines that you see going from over China and up to Kazakhstan and Pakistan, and then you have another one going down over Malaysia and then out into the Indian Ocean to the west of the Australian continent. That's where they're coming up with this information. Let's see. Oh, another thing that was really perplexing to me and actually frustrating to me this morning was listening to the report that they've determined now that when that airplane made the initial sharp turn to the left, that was not manually done. That was pre-programmed into the flight management computer. And I'm thinking, well, how do they know that? How could you possibly know that the airplane turned using the flight management computer and the autopilot system? I dare you to get on my airplane, and I want you to sit back in the back, and I want you to tell me when I was flying the airplane manually, turning the airplane manually, descending and climbing, etc., and when the airplane was being flown by the autopilot system. You won't be able to tell. Now, there are some people I fly with you probably could tell, but you will not be able to tell when I have the autopilot on and when I'm flying the airplane, on my airplane. So that's a bunch of poppycock. That's rubbish. I don't know where they're getting this information. The Malaysian minister or so-and-so said this. Okay, well, show me the facts. Where is this data? Where's this evidence that any of this happened? I mentioned earlier the primary radar returns. Oh, well, we think they went up to 45,000 feet and then it dropped 40,000 feet in 1 minute. Don't think so, because that would mean the airplane would have to be traveling about the speed of sound or faster than the speed of sound, basically straight down. And most airliners will not hold up. They'll fall to pieces. They'll break apart with that. It's just impossible to have that kind of a descent rate. Even Air France Flight 447 out over the Atlantic Ocean, in a full stall, a full aft stick accelerated stall, was only dropping 11,000 feet per minute or so. Okay, so the idea that this 777 was dropping 30, 40,000 feet per minute is rubbish. Again, where are you coming up with this information? You don't have it. You're just, it's one thing to speculate, and I speculate about what could have happened. We have all kinds of different scenarios that could have possibly happened. Hijacking. Somebody could have broken into the cockpit. One of the pilots or both of the pilots could be in cahoots and hijack the airplane themselves. Hypoxia. A scenario that I'm going to talk about here in just a moment, which is one of the newer ones that I've heard. And again, it's a plausible scenario, a possible scenario. But you can't get on the news, on the TV, and say, well, this is conclusive evidence that this is what it is. Not until you find the airplane and until you get the information from the black boxes, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. Now, if it were a hijacking, or is a hijacking situation, and they purposely deactivated the ACARS system, they purposely deactivated the transponder system, somebody actually went down to the E&E compartment and actually disabled the satellite uplink system, which I really don't believe happened. Well, obviously, they're going to have the technological knowledge to pull the circuit breakers or deactivate the circuit breakers for the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. So if it's that scenario, even if we do find the airplane, we're not going to have any valid information on the black boxes. Now, so let's just keep our heads, and if you're listening to me out there and you're one of those people that are called up by CNN and Fox News Channel and all these other news outlets to be an expert, I mean, I really ask you to think twice about accepting this, because the people that you're going to try to explain these things to, they're not getting it. They don't understand. They don't have the capability to understand all the technological and practical implications of what you're saying. Okay, it's like all going over their head. It's like blah 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 blah. They hear something and then they latch onto it and they don't really understand. So I would ask you to, I mean, if somebody called me up right now and said, "Hey Jeff, you do this airline pilot guy show. We'd like you to be on CNN tonight and talk about what you think happened," I would say no. We don't know. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to make a fool out of myself and say something that I'm going to regret in the future. Okay. And plus, I'm not authorized by my airline, my real airline, to make that kind of an appearance on national TV. And CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, Fox News Channel, please, if you're getting the janitor or some guy that read a book about aviation and you're calling them an aviation expert, excuse me, don't call these people aviation experts. Don't pretend or portray these people as experts. They don't have any credibility whatsoever. And so that's all I have to say about that. And I must play one of my favorite sound effects.
I have very little patience for stupidity.
Yes.
Stupid is, stupid does, sir.
Okay. So I got that off my chest. So let's see. Make sure that we don't have any other items to talk about. Pinging and transponders, and we've heard some other. I heard another story, which is plausible. It's kind of kind of weird, kind of far-fetched, if I don't say so myself. But somebody had said, well, maybe the hijackers found another airplane to shadow, and they turned off their transponder and basically flew undetected for hours and hours and hours by kind of just being below, the airplane, and basically in the airplane shadow the whole time. Now that's possible. Some of you go, oh, come on, really? That's not even possible. Well, it is. I don't know if you remember back several years ago, Israel launched an attack, and I think it was in Iran, maybe Iraq. I forget which country, but I think it was Iran. They were building a nuclear reactor, as they are now, and they launched an attack, and the F-16s, I believe they used, basically flew information, got underneath a civilian airliner, and the airliner didn't know they were there, and they weren't being picked up on primary radar. It looked like a regular primary return from this airplane, and then as they got closer to the target, then they broke out away from that airplane and did their bombing run and blew up whatever it was they blew up. I'm sorry, I don't have all the details there, but it has been done. Does it take a skilled aviator to do that? Yes. The other thing, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of coming up with all these things in my head. I don't really have an outline to go by, but the media is just like obsessed with this captain that has this flight simulator in his house. I mean, what kind of crazy person would have a simulator in their house? Well, many of you know, listening right now, I know that for sure, are PC simmers. And is it that unusual for somebody, an aviation enthusiast, an aviation geek, to have a PC-based simulator in their house? No, it's not crazy. Now, not all of us airline pilots do. I don't really know any that do, but that doesn't mean that it's that unusual for Captain Shaw, whatever his name was, to have had that in the house. Well, maybe he had that there to practice low-level flying. It takes great skills to fly low-level at 5,000 feet. No, it doesn't. It doesn't take great skills to fly at 5,000 feet. We fly at 5,000 feet every darn day when we're landing at an airport. Just today, coming into Miami, we're flying at 5,000, 3,000, 2,000 level. It doesn't take great skills. You don't need a simulator to practice that. That's ridiculous. It's, again, that lack of knowledge that people have about aviation and our jobs as pilots that fuels all this nonsense. And, I, for one, and I'm sure many of you agree with me, just make it stop. I've turned off the TV. I'm not going to watch it anymore until we get some evidence. Somebody finds that airplane, whether it's in Pakistan somewhere in a hangar or a warehouse or in a cave somewhere, if it's debris they found floating in the Indian Ocean, debris or evidence that the airplane is on the bottom of the ocean somewhere. Until we get that evidence, I think it's okay to speculate and come up with the scenarios, but don't start reporting these things like it's news. Okay. Oh, the latest thing I was going to tell you, just right before I recorded the show, was the idea that there may have been some kind of an electrical problem, which would account for the fact that many of these systems shut down, and would account for the rapid and low-level flight of the 777 and heading westward based on the radar returns that they have from the Malaysian military radar, and also corroborated by the Thai military radar returns, heading over toward, some people think, maybe this long 13,000-foot runway in the southern part of Thailand. Perhaps the pilots were going for that airport that they knew was probably the closest airport to get the airplane on the ground. Again, as I mentioned earlier, a fire on the airplane, that's a serious thing. It could be that the circuit that is on fire is the one that's powering up the transponder and ACARS system. It could be that they decide going through the checklist, or maybe not even going through the checklist, depending on how sudden and urgent the situation is, just turning off all the power that you can get away with turning off and just going on emergency power, which would basically shut off all those things that we know were not receiving power, were either purposely shut off or somehow turned themselves off. And then that in that scenario, it's possible that the crew was overcome by smoke or whatever, and the airplane just continued on autopilot on that track for several hours, flying that track at 5,000 feet or whatever altitude. There's a report from some witnesses in the Maldives, an atoll or group of islands, 26 different atolls south of the Indian continent in the Indian Ocean that have reports seeing an airplane very low traveling from east to west, a white airplane with red stripes. One of the witnesses said that it was close enough and low enough that they could count the doors in the airplane, and heading out over the Indian Ocean. Now, that timeline works. The aircraft had enough fuel to make it to that point. If that's the case, sounds to me like it probably just ran out of fuel and crashed somewhere west of those of the Maldives. Now, is that an accurate piece of information? Well, it's a witness report. No, it's not. Could it have happened? Yes, it could have, but it's not substantial evidence or factual information. But it's something it's a lead to investigate. There were also some people in northern Malaysia and southern Thailand that reported an airplane, a big airplane, traveling very low from east to west. Many of these reports said a bright light. Now, I'm not sure that if it was somebody trying to evade radar detection, trying to evade detection at all, they wouldn't have the lights on. So, but if it was a situation where it was electrical fire, I could see maybe a bright light streaking across the sky at low level. Again, these are all points of information, not necessarily facts, something that we can speculate about, come up with theories, etc. But let's don't cross that line between speculation, theories, hypotheses, into fact. This definitely happened. With certainty we can say that this happened. That turn was not made manually. It was programmed into the computer. Again, I don't see how you can say that. Where is your information? Where is that evidence? I don't think there is that evidence. That's all circumstantial speculation. Okay. So, hopefully, we'll find out something soon and then put all this rubbish to rest. I mean, why can't you report on something like Crimea, Ukraine, the Russian Federation, the reestablishment of the Soviet Union? Don't we have a lot of other things to talk about on the news? I think we do. Okay, and until we get some more information, some concrete information about Malaysia 370, let's move on. Okay. Okay. Speaking of information that we can talk about, and we know for sure happened, a US Airways Airbus 320 on takeoff crashed. Well, sort of crashed on runway 27 left in Philadelphia, and I thought I had some audio from that. Here, let me go over here to this and pull up my folder for 109. Yeah, I do. Let's listen to a little bit of the audio from via liveatc.net of the control tower at Philadelphia from US Airways Flight 1702. And then we had to push this button.
It's a 1702, number 6 for departure.
1702, roger.
Cactus 1702, you'll be next for departure, calling the southwest.
1702.
Cactus 1702, runway 27 left, line up and wait.
Line up and wait, 27 left, Cactus 1702.
Excuse me.
Cactus 1702, flight heading 230, runway 27 left, clear for takeoff.
230 and clear for takeoff, Cactus 1702.
Break Air 3297, runway 27 left, line up and wait.
27 left, line up and wait, Break Air 3297.
Southwest 624, contact departure.
That's 624, so on.
I guess there's a little bit of dead air there. Should have edited that out. Here, let me see if I can go ahead.
Break Air 3297, runway 27 left, fly runway heading clear for takeoff.
27 left, fly runway heading clear for takeoff, Break Air 3297.
Okay, 27 left is a very long runway. It's the runway when we're using west, which is normal operation at Philadelphia. When we're taking off to the west, we use 27 left for our takeoffs, and as I said, it's a very long runway. And the US Airways jet was given clearance for takeoff. They're considerably far down the runway as the control tower gives Brickyard, whatever their number is, clearance for takeoff.
Brickyard 3398, runway 27 left, line up and wait.
Okay, so not only did they clear one of the regional jets for takeoff after US Airways is already in the middle of their takeoff roll, they also clear another regional jet, another Brickyard, into position and hold.
Left and wait, Brickyard 3398.
Tower, something going on the runway here.
Brickyard 3297, cancel takeoff clearance and just hold position.
Cancel takeoff clearance, Break Air 3297.
Okay, so the guy that was given takeoff clearance, the Brickyard flight, the regional jet, notices that something is going on with the airplane ahead of them, the US Air flight. They cancel takeoff clearance.
1702, unit frequency.
1702.
Okay, yeah, it's really tough to tell. I see smoke down there, and are you still on the runway?
No comment.
1702, we're going to dispatch the emergency vehicles.
Good idea.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. We're just dispatching the emergency vehicles.
Okay, fine.
No problem, sir. We got the vehicles en route as soon as we can get them there.
Left engine, left engine.
You say something about the left engine? There was smoke coming from the left engine. Okay, that's enough that. So we have a little bit of the ATC communications with the US Airways Flight 1702. Okay, what else do we have? Well, initial reports said that they think that there was some kind of a blown out tire on the nose wheel, and that led to an abort, and then they somehow swerved off the side of the runway. A lot of us scratched our heads on that, thinking, well, I don't know what the policy is at their airline, but my airline, you know, we don't abort for a blown tire unless it's very early in the takeoff roll. And but you never initiate a high-speed abort unless you think that you can't control the airplane and get it off the ground safely. So scratching our heads about that one. And then starting to hear a little bit of information with eyewitness reports about the fact that US Airways actually got airborne. And that was really something that we started scratching our heads about, thinking, wait a minute, if you're already airborne, you can't abort. You have to keep on going. You have to keep flying. This was a witness in the A West Lounge. He says, sitting in the A West Lounge, just watched what I think was a US A319, that's a 320, bounce twice on takeoff from 27 left, then have front gear collapse at high speed. Can't see where it stopped, but smoke from the west end of 27 left. We'll update as I see more. Okay, the next update, listening to Tower. Obviously, this is an aviation enthusiast because he's listening via liveatc.net. Aircraft evacuating emergency vehicles en route, people walking around near the aircraft. A couple minutes later, emergency vehicles told to take care due to number of people walking around, probably thinking of the Asiana San Francisco incident where somebody was run over. All Philadelphia departures and arrivals have halted, and the airport is on Alert 2 status. About 10 minutes later, he updates, no more smoke from the area where the aircraft likely stopped. I'm still shaking, and I was only watching from afar. We'll type up my recollection shortly. No pics, and I can't see where it wound up from the west end of the A West Lounge. Hope everybody's okay. Would have been some pretty strong G-forces from what I saw. And then at about 10 minutes later, he says tower reports it was an Airbus 320. Okay, so here's what I saw. So he's had time to recollect. He says around 6:26 p.m., I was in the US Airways Club in Terminal A West over gate A15, able to see roughly the eastern half of runway 27 left. That's the beginning part of the takeoff roll. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a plane get 30 to 50 feet in the air, then come down and bounce on the runway, then become airborne for another 2 to 3 seconds, and then land with more weight towards the front landing gear. Front gear collapsed, sparks on the runway, and then skid out of my line of sight. Okay, so we have that eyewitness report there. Obviously, again, not your normal witness. It's somebody that knows something about aviation. They know to listen to liveatc.net. I think that's a pretty significant fact there. I also was trying to scour some of the airline pilot forums that you can kind of look at and see what conversation's going on about certain things. And there's a big discussion in there about, what happened if the thing actually became airborne. Why in the world would they try to put it back down on the runway unless there was something very catastrophic? Again, we don't abort, do a high-speed abort unless it's an engine failure, engine fire, a wind shear, or we think that the airplane just won't fly. Now, maybe it was windy that day, so maybe they encountered some kind of a wind shear situation. And the other thing is, now I can't confirm that this is actually the case, but there was a picture in one of the forums, and it may have been a picture of an airplane from months ago to years ago, but it was painted in US Airways colors, and it had huge scrape marks on the tail section of the airplane. And some people are saying they think that's what happened. They either over-rotated, or perhaps the center of gravity, the trim wasn't set properly, and it was a tailstrike on departure, and then they panicked and tried to put it on the ground. So I don't know. I'm not casting any aspersions. I'm not saying what they did was wrong. It may have been their only choice, or they may have screwed up and brought an airplane down and aborted the airplane after they got airborne, and that was the wrong thing to do. I don't know. I'm not saying. Captain Jeff doesn't know. So I'm not placing any blame or guilt or anything like that. So I think only 2 minor injuries resulted from the evacuation, and I'm not sure if what the status of the airplane is and that kind of thing. So we'll try to keep our eyes and ears open on that event, because that could help us learn some lessons, and both good and bad, perhaps. Okay, so that's that. And then there was an airplane, a Delta flight from Orlando to Atlanta, that as they initiated their descent into Atlanta, they encountered buffeting, and on the right side of the airplane, you may have seen the picture on the social media of a panel missing toward the trailing edge on the inboard portion of the 757 wing. Now, I just so happen to have some inside information. Now, I don't know how accurate it is. This is secondhand, actually. One of the Acme people I know knows one of the Delta mechanics at Orlando Airport, and they said that they had heard that this is a fiberglass panel, about 4 by 8, so about the size of a sheet of drywall or plywood, that, according to this mechanic, was not affixed to the wing by screws, but by rivets, and somehow had, I don't know, maybe worked its way into the airstream, and then the whole thing just peeled off. I don't know. That doesn't sound. I mean, it sounds to me like, and looking at the picture, it looks like something that should have been fixed by screws, not rivets. But that's just the information that that mechanic was telling my Acme mechanic. informant. And that apparently, as the panel, the fiberglass panel, came off the airplane, it somehow ruptured one of the hydraulic lines as well. You may notice in that picture there's kind of a spray, a leak, a fluid leak coming out. And according to this mechanic, that they experienced a hydraulic system failure. Now, one of the hydraulic systems, not a complete hydraulic system failure, and that they had to actually manually lower the landing gear because the system to normally lower the landing gear was the hydraulic system they lost. They landed on the longest runway in Atlanta, which again would indicate to me that they had some reduced capabilities based on the reduced hydraulic system malfunction. Perhaps they only had a certain amount of flaps that they could extend based on this emergency, whatever. So there was some buffeting. Obviously, you're not going to have clean airflow over that wing, so that you're going to experience something that may feel like you have the speed brakes up, something to, in the airstream. But in this case, just a big hole out there, so the air is not smoothly flowing over. It's kind of getting caught in that big hole, the cavity in the wing. The thing I want to know is, did that fiberglass panel hit somebody on the ground? You hear about this stuff all the time. Engine cowling panels coming off the airplane, pieces of the airplanes falling off. But you hardly ever hear of anybody saying, "Yeah, I got hit in the head by a big piece of something from an airplane." But so apparently it just landed in a field somewhere and didn't hurt anybody or anything. So not exactly sure exactly what happened there, but that's the information that I heard through the grapevine. So again, we'll keep our eyes and ears open about any developments regarding that. Wow, I've been going already for an hour. Okay. Let's see. So we talked about Malaysia Flight 370. We talked about the US Airways Airbus. We talked about the piece of the panel, or a panel off of a Boeing 757 that decided to not stay on the airplane. And I have a couple other items in the news, just quickly. Notice that there is something out there near Las Vegas, Nevada, that is generating complaints about possible unsafe conditions. And it's being caused by a large solar power plant in the Mojave Desert, according to documents filed with the state agency. And Las Vegas officials are urging the plant's designer to do something about the problem. According to a March 10th letter from the Las Vegas McCarran Airport's planning manager, Teresa Motley, pilot complains of unsafe glare from the tens of thousands of billboard-sized mirrors at the Ivanpah Solar Electric Generating System, the ISEGS, have been coming in since at least August 2013, with at least one pilot saying that the glare from the facility interfered with the crew's ability to scan the sky for nearby aircraft. And I've seen some of those solar arrays, and if it's the right time of day and you catch a glimpse of that thing, that's worse than a laser beam. And we talked about these incidents of lasers and people shining them at airplanes and helicopters and people being temporarily blinded. Well, that's what's happening here with this solar electric generating system facility out there near Las Vegas. And let's see, they have a couple reports here, examples. Co-pilot and I were distracted and momentarily blinded by the sun reflecting off of mirrors at the solar power plant facility located near the California-Nevada border, near the town of Primm. This solar power plant, which I believe is still under construction, consists of 3 massive circular arrays of thousands of mirrors oriented inward toward a central tower. As soon as we cleared the mountains southwest of BVU, from 6,000 to 12,000 feet MSL, still climbing, there were 3 very bright reflections, one from each solar array of the sun into the pilot's and co-pilot's eyes. The reflection from the northernmost array was the brightest and the largest and grew in size as we flew closer to the facility. The flight path of our aircraft passed overhead of this facility. At its brightest, neither the pilot nor the co-pilot could look in that direction due to the intense brightness. And perhaps more soberingly, The second letter quoted came from an air traffic controller working out of the Los Angeles Air Route Traffic Control Center in Palmdale, which coordinates air traffic throughout Southern California and adjacent portions of Nevada and Arizona. According to his letter, also filed in August of 2013, pilot complaints about visual interference from this facility were commonplace. Daily, during the late morning and early afternoon hours, we get complaints from pilots of aircraft flying from the northeast to the southwest about the brightness of this solar farm. They usually ask us what it is because they don't know. On this particular morning, an air carrier complained about the brightness and reiterated that it was nearly blinding. I reported this to management and was told that they were going to do nothing about it. They then suggested that I tell the pilot to report it through the safety reporting system that they have and to report it myself. I have no idea what can be done about this situation, but being a passenger on an aircraft that flew through this airspace, I saw it for myself. I would say that something needs to be done. It is extremely bright and distracting. So McCarran is asking Bright Source, the company that put in this facility and building it, and presumably it's now its managing partner in Ivanpah NRG Energy, to survey the amount of glare coming from this facility using handheld mirrors and to provide airline pilots with contact information. So we'll see what happens about that. And finally, this one can wait. It's a study about go-around non-compliance, fueling landing accidents. It's some research done by a Canadian research firm, Presage, and it was in Aviation Week. So we'll talk about that on the next show. How about? And let me scan through here and see what's. If I got everything, I think I do. And let me go over here to my chat room page. Hey, look at that. 13 people in the chat room. If you're listening to watching the show after the fact and not live, and you're listening to this audio podcast, which obviously you're not listening to it live. You don't have the capability of doing that. And you're interested in being in a chat room and enjoying this live chat room experience, I'll try to, in the future, try to come up with more of a notice for you, prior notice, so that you can kind of plan on joining us at a certain time. Again, this is something new. This is the first time that I've actually told people that I'm going to be doing the show as a live hangout. And let's see, I see Inge. Hi, Inge. She's waving. Hi, let's see, who else do we have here? We have some anonymous people. You know, I don't want to get too distracted from, because as people who know me, I get easily distracted. And looking at the comments in the chat room, especially when I'm doing a solo show, is going to be a problem for Captain Jeff. It's one thing when I do a panel show on Saturday mornings, when I don't have to be the only one talking and thinking and doing things. I can read things going on in the chat room. But if I'm doing a solo show like this, not a good idea. So y'all have fun in there, and you know, tell me about what your experience was and if you liked it or not. So, okay, so I've been going at this thing now for a little over an hour. It's 6 o'clock local time here. I'm going to go ahead and do some feedback and just keep on going, even though I'm hungry and I need to eat. But I'm going to play this. The best part of the show is now.
Captain, incoming message.
Thank you. Okay, I was going to play this on the last episode, but I didn't download the file, and this is from Pilot Pip. And let's hear what Pilot Pip has to say. Where did Pilot Pip's thing go? You know what? I think this may have been... Oh, you know what, Pilot Pip, if you're listening, you left me some feedback on SpeakPipe, and it didn't come through. So if you want me to respond, it was like a 3-minute in duration message that you left, and every time I hit the play button, it doesn't do anything. So that's why I still have it in there. So resend, please, if you're listening. Okay, Dave writes, passenger distribution. Okay, a couple of questions for you today. I would assume that on your MD-88 and MD-90, that they try to seat an equal number of passengers on each side of the airplane and evenly distribute passengers throughout the length of the aircraft. Question mark. The Embraer 145 regional jet that I was on today had 3 seats in each row. It was a 1 and 2 seating. 1 seat by the window, then by the aisle, then 2 seats together on the other side of the aisle. The aisle does not run down the exact center of the airplane. Would that create an off-balance problem when the plane has a full load of passengers? In a word, no. The Mad Dog, the 88 and 90, has an offset aisle as well. It's either 2 and 3 or 3 and 2, depending on whether it's an 88 or a 90. Why they changed it from one to the other, I don't know, but they did. And the reason why it's not a factor at all is because the center of the airplane, you know, that's that axis going through the center, the longitudinal axis. People sitting on either side of the middle are so close to the middle that it doesn't generate a big enough arm. You know, we're talking physics here, or mechanical engineering. It doesn't present enough of a difference or a force on either side of that axis to be noticeable. So no, they don't pay attention. So I would imagine that if everybody sat on the right side of the airplane, or everybody sat on the left side, maybe I'd have to put in a little bit of wing trim, and I'd probably go, the airplane's bent, but not anything significant, no. As far as forward and aft distribution, I've heard that some airplanes are sensitive to that, but none of the airplanes I've ever flown, I've noticed anything about, you know, arranging the passengers in a certain place to kind of keep that center of gravity, center of lift envelope within safe operating parameters. Now, some of you listening who are pilots on airplanes that I haven't flown, maybe the smaller ones, maybe there are airplanes that you do have to pay attention to that and actually move people from, you know, the back to the front or the front to the back or closer to the middle, whatever. I don't know. But in my experience, no, that has not been a factor. What else did I want to say about that? Nothing. Okay. And the second question is, this is from Dave in Toronto. Has an air traffic controller or ground controller ever given you some instructions that were incorrectly unsafe, where you had to correct or question them about these instructions? If it was something serious, how would you go about reporting them, or would you report them? Well, yeah. Occasionally, we're all human. Pilots make mistakes, controllers make mistakes, and that's why we all have to be listening to each other and kind of paying attention to have good situational awareness. The thing that comes to mind for me in my own experience, and I'm sure that I've had some other experiences as well, but the one that comes to mind was a day that the weather was just horrible in Atlanta. I think it was probably the late spring or summertime, thunderstorms, whatever, and we had to hold over on the northeastern gate coming into Atlanta, and so airplanes were established in holding patterns, and I could tell that the air traffic controller was a new air traffic controller because I did not recognize her voice, and I could just tell she was a little bit more timid, and you could occasionally hear a supervisor's voice in the background. Again, excuse me for my coughing. I wish I had a button that I could just push, but I don't. And so I was listening, as I always do, and I recommend that all of you out there who fly do the same. Listen to not only, don't pay attention just when they say your flight number, because it could mean, it could mean the difference between hitting an airplane or not hitting an airplane. In my case, I'm listening and I'm building this picture in my own head about all the different airplanes that are established and holding, and which ones are at the front of the queue, and which ones are the ones are just entering the holding pattern. And I'm listening to all these different altitudes, and you can kind of figure out, based on various flights altitudes, which ones are going to be the first ones to leave, which is important because you need to know about where you are in this whole sequence of events, and you have to kind of be looking at your fuel and deciding, okay, what's our bingo fuel? In other words, what's that point where the fuel has to get to that you say, you know what, we're finished holding here, we're going to move on to our alternate. So I'm listening to all this going on, and I heard the controller give an altitude clearance to someone established in holding, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's the same altitude that this other airplane in the holding pattern is at, and I haven't heard that airplane being cleared from that altitude. So that's never good for two airplanes in a holding pattern being cleared to the same altitude. And so I questioned it. I said, say the altitude again for flight so-and-so. And then all of a sudden I heard a supervisor's voice come on, and then he just started issuing commands. So-and-so flight, turn left, heading, immediately turn left, heading so-and-so, descend, maintain so-and-so. And he was trying to de-conflict the whole situation. And had I not said anything, would somebody have noticed? Perhaps. I don't know. We don't know. That's a hypothetical, right? But it's one of those situations where the controller made a mistake, and luckily I noticed it and said something about it. So again, I do recommend, and this happens so many times. I'll be flying along, and I'll be having a conversation with my fellow crew member, and then all of a sudden, I'm listening to everything going on, and then I'll start laughing about something, and then the person sitting with me in the cockpit will go, "What? What are you laughing at?" They think I'm laughing at something they said, and I said, "No, I was just listening to United 403 here, say something about this," and usually it's that look like, "Oh, no, I didn't hear that." I'm not paying attention to that. You need to pay attention out there, folks. And just a little tangent here. This idea that this next-gen system is somehow going to eliminate radio frequencies and voice communication, so we're going to get nothing but digital data sent between the controller and my airplane, and I'm going to send direct information directly from my airplane back to that controller, and I'm not going to hear anybody else out there. I might see little blips on my little screen with relative altitudes, but I don't know what their clearances are. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know where they're going. I think that's a bad idea. Really, really bad idea. And if they really push for this, I will be very vocal about it, and I will do more than just do this little podcast about it. I will actually get involved with preventing that from occurring, because I think that, yes, the radio frequencies are congested. I agree. But you cannot replace the situational awareness you get with listening to other aircraft on frequency. You just can't. Coming into a terminal area, I mean, and if you're listening to me and you're a professional pilot, that you go to these places like Atlanta, like Miami, whatever, and they are crossing airplane, New York, LaGuardia, you're coming in on final, and all of a sudden you're seeing these airplanes crossing your runway. And they're not talking to tower control, they're talking to another ground controller, and you don't hear that crossing information. The only thing you have is your eyeballs to see it. I think that's dangerous. I think that if it has anything to do with the runway, then that should be the tower frequency. So if you're going to cross an airplane, they should be on tower frequency. A tower should be giving them that clearance to cross, and that way, and that's what happens in Atlanta usually. When you hear somebody crossing or told to hold short of a runway, you hear it when you're coming in for landing. So you know that when you see that airplane crossing and you know that they've been told to hold short, that you better be prepared to go around or do something to prevent a catastrophe. So, okay, I'm going to step down from my soapbox, one of my little pet peeves, and continue with some more feedback. Ryan writes, and Ryan Padilla was one of the guys that showed up in Orlando last month for the meetup that we had at the Brick House Tavern and Tap. Had a great time meeting for aviation enthusiasts. And Ryan is the guy that's going to start flight training sometime soon. And he says, "Hello, Captain Jeff. Hope you're doing well. I didn't have a chance to write you on the last podcast, but I just wanted to say that I really enjoy our meetup at the Brick House in Orlando. With that being said, I have a quick question. as you already know, I'm preparing myself to start flight school soon. I'm fully aware that a bachelor's degree is required to apply at any major airline in the U.S. I'm thinking of obtaining a non-aviation bachelor's degree just in case my pilot career doesn't go as I hopefully expect. Is this a good idea? If it is, then when is it time for the airlines to furlough pilots? Will the fact that I have a non-aviation degree affect me in any way? Will I be the first one to be furloughed? Thank you, and hope to see you again back in Orlando. Ryan, great question. And actually, no, I do as I say and not as I do. I graduated from Auburn University with a degree in aviation management. So if I got furloughed earlier in my career, what am I going to do with an aviation management degree? I mean, if they're furloughing pilots, probably not going to be a lot of jobs for people with a degree in aviation. The only thing I'd be able to do is go and try to find a job flying airplanes for somebody else, right? I think it's a great idea. And in fact, I recommend, unless you're in a situation, I think that some of the European carriers and maybe some of the other worldwide carriers, this is not the case. I think that your chances of getting hired by some of these airlines is better if you do have an aviation or engineering type of degree. But I can't say that with certainty. I don't know, but I sense that that's the case. But here in the United States, you're not going to be any more attractive to an airline for being hired by them based on what your degree is. They just want to know that you do have a college degree. They don't care if it's basket weaving or English or Latin or geopolitics or electrical engineering or whatever. It doesn't matter. You have a degree. You check that box. So, as you said, Ryan, we go into one of those economic downturns and they start furloughing people. Yeah, now at least you have a degree that you can do something with. You have another option. Okay, so maybe you have a degree in business or finance or accounting. Well, maybe you can get a job out there as an accountant or whatever. Okay, I think you're going to be in a better position than somebody like me who has an aviation management degree from Auburn University. Now your question about would you get furloughed before somebody else based on whatever degree you have? Absolutely not. Everything's based on seniority. So, it depends on when you were hired and what your number is. And the furloughing is going to be strictly tied to that. The people that are most junior on the list, they're going to get furloughed first. So the most senior people at the company, they're not going to get furloughed. I've had people, when we have furlough situations at Acme, we've had in the past a couple times, people from my church would say, "Hey Jeff, are you kind of worried? You're going to lose your job, you're going to get furloughed, you're going to get laid off." And I always say to them, if they get to the point where I am on the seniority list, that means the company's going out of business. I mean, I'm in the top 20% of the seniority list, system-wide seniority list at Acme. If they get to my number, that airline ain't going to be around. So, no, I'm not worried because I'm not near the bottom of the list. That's when you have to worry, when you're really junior. In fact, I fly with some people occasionally who are very, very junior, and they say, you know what, it doesn't really so much matter how many people are ahead of me on the list, it's how many people are behind me. That's what's most important at this point in my career. And no, it has nothing to do, Ryan, with your degree. Thanks for your question, and again, keep us up to date with what you're doing in your pursuit for a flying career. And Kyle, this is kind of a related question. He says, I'm currently a university student in Calgary, Alberta, with a passion for aviation, and your podcast is outstanding. Well, thank you. I enjoy all the updates you give on current events, and the insight you have on the industry is always a pleasure to listen to. Even as I type this out, I am listening to Flight 107. My grandfather is a pilot, and naturally I got the bug at the young age and was determined to become a commercial pilot. Unfortunately, I encountered a medical condition, epilepsy, which consequently ended the pursuit of becoming a commercial pilot. I still have a passion for the industry, though, and am currently obtaining a degree in economics from the university here in Calgary. Do you have any suggestions? It's like you're basically part of the flying operation, except for you're not actually a pilot, flying in the airplane. But you have one thing you could do. Many things, jobs at airlines and in the aviation world that you could pursue that don't include flying the airplane. I have a suggestion for you. There's a great podcast by Carl Valeri. Yeah, he had me on one of his shows. I think it was like episode 244 or something like that. I don't remember the exact number. That may have been the Airplane Geeks. Anyway, there was an episode that I was on, but don't listen to that one because it's about being an airline pilot. But it's called Aviation Careers Podcast, and Carl interviews people that are doing various aspects or various jobs within the airline or aviation industry. So I would recommend that you listen. You go over to the Aviation Careers Podcast and listen to some of those episodes. You might get some ideas for what you can do to kind of keep your big toe in the aviation pool. And if any of you listeners out there have some suggestions, wow, I'm tired. Send it to me. You know how to do that. Feedback at airlinepilotguy.com. Okay, Connor says, "Hey, Cap Jeff, I've been drawn to aviation, especially the airlines, since I was young." Hey, that kind of seems like a recurring theme here, isn't it? I was drawn to the airlines and aviation when I was young, too. Your podcast is a great way to get my fix. I've begun listening to your past shows. In episode 3, wow, that was a long time ago, you were telling a news story about a plane having to return to the airport due to a fight on board. In the story, it was reported that the crew had to dump a lot of fuel. My question is, are there any penalties from the government for dumping fuel due to environmental issues? What can dumping fuel cause to either water or land? Thanks for your awesome podcast and keep up your great work. Thanks. Connor, good question. And I'll tell you that what happens to the fuel when you dump it and it goes out of these dumping valves, it's kind of aspirated, and by the time, well, basically it's just absorbed by the atmosphere before it actually hits the ground, unless you're really low to the ground, and you don't want to be dumping fuel low to the ground. Typically, airplanes are out in holding patterns at 10,000 feet or above and dumping fuel. And again, if you're right below where the airplane is in a holding pattern dumping fuel and you're sitting there and holding your hand out, you're not going to feel any fuel. Okay, it's going to be completely absorbed into the, is it entropy? I'm not a physics major, so I'm not sure exactly what the word is, but the atmosphere has a certain capability of absorbing energy and dispersing things, and it's kind of like blowing smoke. If I'm right in front of you and I don't smoke, by the way, but if I did and I blew smoke in your face and you're a foot away from me, you'd feel the smoke and you'd see it. But if you were 20 feet away from me, by the time the smoke got there, it's gone. It kind of evaporates. Same thing. I know that smoke's not a liquid, but you get the idea. It's condensation nuclei, and it kind of, I don't know if evaporates is the right word, eviscerates, aerates, one of those words, I'm sure, maybe. So I have not heard of any penalties being slapped on airlines from various governments. I could be wrong about that, but I've never heard anything like that. Okay, woo, good. I have some audio feedback from my neighbor in Alpharetta, Ray, about ice fog, and this is in response to a comment, some feedback that I received from episode 107. So let's listen to Ray. Take it away, Ray.
Hi, Captain Jeff. This is Ray Williams from Alpharetta. I'm currently listening to episode 107 of your Airline Pilot Guy, and I wanted to reply to Richard from Sweden's question about sudden fog that the pilot reported on a flight from somewhere or other to Kazakhstan. Anyway, he said he'd never heard of the term sudden fog. And in response, I would like to quote from Guy Murchie's book, Song of the Sky, where he says, "Ice fog is another danger not easily eliminated. ice fog is formed not of condensed water droplets like ordinary fog, but of microscopic ice crystals that have sublimated from water vapor in the air. Sublimation, or direct freezing of the vapor without its going through the intermediate liquid stage, rarely occurs when the temperature is not at least 20 degrees below zero, and in clean air around 50 degrees below. If all air were nearly pure, ice fog would be too scarce to be a problem, even in Siberia. But the smoke from a small Arctic village, or an airport kitchen, or even an Alaskan highway is enough to form ice fog on the lee side on almost any nearly calm, cold day or night. And the ice crystals will sparkle like diamond dust in the sun or moonlight as the fog thickens and settles into low spots, often later spilling slowly out over a large area. At times, the balance between ice fog and no ice fog is so delicate that the microscopic nuclei from the exhaust of a single aeroplane warming up at one end of an Arctic runway is enough to transform clear air into dangerous ice fog over a whole airport in 10 minutes. At such times, a pilot at 6,000 feet and 20 miles away may see the airport clearly and approach a runway thinking visibility is unlimited, only to discover just before his wheels touch that the air is turning white and low horizontal vision is so reduced he can hardly see the runway in front of him. And that's the end of the quote. So those conditions seem to have existed on Richard's flight to Kazakhstan. So just thought I'd let you know. Thanks again for the great podcast, and safe flying. Cheers.
Cheers, Ray. Thank you very much. Always enjoy listening to your audio feedback. Great accent. And again, he's one of my neighbors just to the north of me in Alpharetta, Georgia. I'm looking at the chat room, and Dr. Steph says, did he just say eviscerate? That means to disembowel. Perhaps you mean evaporate, Jeff. No, I meant eviscerate, Steph. It sounded like a really, really sophisticated thing to say, but apparently not the right thing to say. So, and again, or for those of you watching live, I do apologize for the sucky bandwidth here at my hotel. I guess some of you are kind of seeing me, and it's breaking up, and it's not good quality, and sorry. I don't know what to do about that. Okay, let's continue. You know what? Maybe if I started playing some of this feedback on my iPad, it would help with the processor on my laptop. So let me see if I can find the last piece of feedback I've played. And stand by. Chris writes, evening, Captain. Thoroughly enjoy your podcasts. Really good to hear a genuine opinion from the front line. Forgive me if you've already covered this. With the recent statement today regarding the 2 stolen passport holders not being suspected of terrorism in the military of, this is about Flight 307, the military's revelation that the plane turned west from its course before disappearing, is it more or less likely that we're looking at a crash rather than a hijacking? My reason for asking is there have been no claims of responsibility for a hijacking. Despite the unannounced course change and lack of debris so far, it's almost beyond belief. This is from Chris Addison in Scotland. Yeah, it is. I don't know if it's more or less likely that we're looking at a crash rather than a hijacking. Maybe a little bit more likely, but you can't rule anything out, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show. It may be. We don't have enough evidence yet. Hopefully we'll find out one of these days. Hello, Fred the pilot. Okay. Jason writes, my name's Jason. I'm 14. I live in South Africa. I love your channel. One day I hope to be a commercial pilot, such as yourself. What is your opinion on the flight simulator games available? Are they good for training, or are they just another PC game? I myself enjoy to fly highly advanced simulated aircraft. Would love to hear from you, hopefully in live stream. Hey, Jason, are you in the live stream right now? If you are, here I am. PC simming. I think that they can be useful in training, depending on your setup. If you just have a very basic setup and you're just pushing keys to make the airplane do something, and you don't actually have like a controller, like a yoke or a stick and throttles and that kind of thing, probably less training value and more game value, I would guess. I don't know really myself because I've never really played around with PC sims, and I know that there are many people listening right now it's a very, very serious hobby, and I've received YouTube videos and everything else, and talking about that sim, the connection with real controllers and real flight plans, and heck, there are virtual airlines out there flying around. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's really opened my eyes to the whole PC simming world, and I know that some of the systems information out there for various airliners and manuals out there that are available, like they're the same manuals that I use for my own training. So I think it's a great way to learn a lot about the airline world. Is it completely realistic? I mean, I think it's hard to really get a realistic simulation unless you're in a full motion simulator like the simulators that we use for our check rides and training. Yeah, but those things are not cheap. I mean, they're millions and millions of dollars to buy and set up one of those things. But I think that everybody listening would agree with me right now that are serious PC simmers, that they are useful in a maybe somewhat limited way for training, but they're a heck of a lot of fun, apparently. So that is my answer, Jason. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Aaron writes, I would like to thank you. You're welcome, Aaron. My question may not quite, I'm trying not to read all the nice things people say because it kind of sounds, I don't want to do that. So I'll continue with the meat of the question. My question may not quite apply to you because of your experience in the MD-80 series, but I would still appreciate your time if you could answer. I understand that many modern airplanes, such as the 737NG new generation and the 777, have advanced computer systems. I am currently a student and on my way for my private pilot license, flying an aircraft with a Garmin 1000 instrument panel. Eventually I want to end up down the road you are currently on right now, and I think I'm on Biscayne Boulevard right now. Excuse me. And let's see. I've heard that commercial aircraft have similar systems related to the G1000. And is this true? I've thought about switching to a steam gauge panel and would appreciate some feedback from an experienced pilot. Thanks, Aaron. Well, Aaron, you are right. There are some airplanes out there that have more advanced, more modern kind of flight displays. I have the flat panels that have all the all-in-one information, the artificial horizon, the navigation display, the radar display, the tapes for airspeed and altitude and everything else, all encompassed in one display. Which there are a couple schools of thought on that. My opinion is that I would prefer somebody to learn instrument flying using steam gauges, as I did and a lot of other people did. That helps establish your instrument cross-check, the old classic T cross-check, and then move to a modern panel display. And because now you have the basics, the fundamentals, you learn them. And if anything goes south, and I love the South, so I don't mean that in a derogatory way. If things go bad, and you lose that very, very fancy display, that all-in-one display, that modern display that many people are cutting their teeth now on, and you have to rely on your standby instruments, and you actually have to do a cross-check, this is not the time to learn how to do it. You must know how to do this if you lose all your primary instruments and you're looking at a standby horizon and a very crude airspeed indicator and altimeter. So that's my opinion. Now, many of you out there would probably go, it doesn't matter. If you learn the new generation stuff with the flat panel display and the all-in-one configuration and user interface, then you're good to go. Well, I guess you could argue that. But if it were me, I would, and I've talked to some flight instructors, and I think most of them agree with me that, and at their flight schools, they do have airplanes that have the old steam gauges. Now, they're not really running on steam. That's just kind of a derogatory term for things that are really old, like me. But I don't know. What do you think? Folks in the chat room, Fred, anybody there want to chime in with your feeling about this? I think Fred flies some pretty sophisticated business jets, and they probably all have the advanced displays. But I would rather fly with somebody that cut their teeth and learned on the old round dials, the round gauge, the steam gauges, whatever you want to call them, and now are using the modern displays, and just because of the fundamentals. I think that being safe and knowing the fundamentals is more important. So we'll see what kind of feedback I get on that. Tim writes in and he says, "Hey, thought you would like to see this short news item from KTVU in San Francisco." This is from Tim Van Ram, and I think I have. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Now I'm probably ruining the video. Sorry, because it's opening a program. Okay, I force quit it. Operator error, bad keystroke on my part. Let's see here. Well, I thought I recorded that, but apparently I haven't. So let me go over here, click this link, and oh, this internet connection appears to be offline. Okay. Well, you know what? I'll save that for the next episode. Sorry, Tim. But it's about a 100-year-old pilot in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it was kind of cool. It was worth listening to. So I'm going to set that one aside and continue on. Gary writes, in light of the recent missing 777, and with today's technology, GPS and satellite communication, why is an airplane's location not known in real time all the time? Is that the goal in next gen? I think it is, yes. And also, why do they allow a transponder to be manually turned off? Okay, well, I talked about that earlier in the show. Fred, finally. By the way, the chat room is delayed for like a minute or two, so by the time you're actually, I'm looking at what you're writing, in history. He says, new kids today can't track an NDB like we did in the day. People don't even know what an NDB is, non-directional beacon. Okay, sorry, being distracted. Squirrel. Why is it that with today's technology we don't have GPS and satellite information like constantly? Well, it has to do with money, lots of money, and until the airlines are required to provide like constant satellite communications and everything else on every airplane everywhere in the world, it's not going to happen. Now, there are going to be some airlines that think it's worth it, and they think it's safer to do it that way, but and we'll spend the money on it, but no, I think everybody that knows anything about this would agree with me that it's the bottom line, the dollar, the mighty dollar. Those slim margins out there for operating airlines. They're deciding whether or not to give you 1 or 2 bags of peanuts, and you're asking them to put in, several thousand, tens of thousands, maybe millions of dollars worth of equipment on every airplane. Yeah, not unless they have to. Speaking of that, secondary restraints. Some airlines have them installed. Very few actually do, but it's not that expensive of an item. I may have talked about it on an earlier episode, but a barrier that's placed in front of the cockpit door when we're making, because that's probably the most vulnerable moment or moments in a flight, when a cockpit door is opened, when the pilot, because we don't have bathrooms, as far as I know. I don't think any airplane that is presently flying today has a bathroom up in their cockpit. And so when nature calls and we have to use the restroom facility, we have to leave the cockpit. The cockpit door has to be opened, and that's when the flight is most vulnerable, when that cockpit door is open. And there are many people saying, hey, why don't we have some kind of a secondary barrier system that's maybe 6, 8, 10 feet away, that actually keeps people from getting beyond a certain point, so that they're not even anywhere near the cockpit door when it's opened and closed when pilots are coming in and out. And I think the company that makes this restraint or um, what is it called, barrier system, it's like $3,500 per airplane. And why don't airplanes have these things installed? I mean, it's not that expensive, but it's expensive enough that if it's not required by the federal government, they're not going to install them, which is a shame. Okay, thanks, Gary. If you're just joining the show, I am feeling a little bit under the weather, headache and cough, and feel like I have a little bit of a fever, but I'm feeling better today, actually. Yesterday, didn't feel well at all. Nicholas Jackson sent a voice message to me on SpeakPipe, so let's listen to Nick Knack Jack. Okay, Nick Knack, you're on.
Hi, Captain Jeff. It's Nick Knack from the Nick Knack podcast. Just want to say I'm still listening and trying to catch up here. I've fallen behind, but I'm definitely trying to catch up. I wanted to see what your opinion was on the media coverage of the Malaysia Airlines incident. Also had a question, or a couple questions actually, about when you're taxiing on single engine, if it's more difficult to control the airplane steering-wise. And then another question, when landing something like the MD-80, MD-90 series with such a long fuselage, how do you make sure that your pitch angle isn't so high that you scrape the tail? Because from my flight simulator experiences, I've had issues with longer fuselages with, say, the 757 and the like, and striking the tail, unfortunately. Flight simulator only, but still. Anyway, keep up the great podcast, still listening, and definitely enjoying the show. Look forward to more episodes. Bye.
Well, the only thing I can say is, how is this all done? An enormous amount of talent. No, I'm just kidding. I think there were three things you mentioned here. The ones that I remember, the single-engine taxi. Is it any more difficult to steer an airplane just using one engine? Not in any of the airplanes that I've flown. Of course, I must put a caveat in there. I've not been a captain on any airplane that has wing-mounted engines and taxiing single engine. I've only been a captain on the 727 and the MD-88, MD-90, and all those airplanes have engines mounted on the tail. There is a little bit of asymmetric thrust involved, but the steering wheel, nose wheel steering authority is enough to counter any kind of force to either side, based on only operating with one engine. The thing that's more important with taxiing using single-engine procedures, which is something we've been doing at Acme for many, many years, it definitely helps save a lot of fuel, is the fact you have to remember that, especially if you're heavy, that you have to think ahead, and you have to, apply the power a little bit earlier. It's kind of like a big steamship, not steamship, but a big like ocean liner. You kind of have to add the power and kind of anticipate when you're going to need to move quickly, and then if you're asked to expedite, you have to kind of be mindful of the fact of your surroundings and what's around you, baggage carts and that kind of thing, other airplanes. Be a good neighbor. And sometimes when you're really heavy and you're going to be maneuvering in a very tight space, or the conditions are pretty slick, like it's a snowy and wet, icy conditions, then it's always a good idea to forget about saving the fuel and saving the money, and having both of your engines operating. That'll help you with your maneuvering, and it's a safer thing. But in most situations, even when the airplane's at its maximum weight, unless I'm going to a place like Washington National or some of these places that's notorious for the asphalt to basically get so soft when it's so darn hot that your airplane sinks into it, and then you could run your single engine even if you're light at almost its full power, and you can't get the airplane to move because you're in this big hole. In that case, you want to have both engines operating. If you're very heavy, you want to have both engines operating. If you're in a situation where you have some tight maneuvering and you don't want to use a lot of power, you want to have both engines. You get the idea. But in general, no, it's no big deal. You kind of get used to taxiing with one engine, both going out and coming in. Tailstrikes or over rotation, long wheelbase, you know, you have to keep that in mind. And I don't know, you know, I don't honestly, when I'm coming in for landing, I'm not cognizant exactly how. I'm not looking down at my artificial horizon and, you know, looking at exactly how many degrees nose high I am. It's just sort of a feel you get, a picture, a sight picture, and you know that when you're getting close to the limit, that just something, the hairs on your back of your neck kind of stand up a little bit. You know that you don't want to rotate the pitch any more than you already have, because you don't want to get the dreaded tail strike, either landing or taking off. And I think that many of folks that are listening right now who fly airliners will agree with me that when you see an airplane auto land, it always uses a much higher pitch angle than we humans are comfortable with. I mean, you know, I used to watch the L1011 land, the 727, and the MD-88, MD-90 when I watch it do auto lands. It's like, really? You're pulling the power back way before I would, and you're putting the pitch, the nose is way up higher than I would ever do. And so I think that that's probably a human factor, that we know that we have a lot of tail hanging out the back and we don't want to scrape it, because apparently it's not a good thing when you do that. It causes damage. Then you have to talk to people and fill out reports, maybe get an unpaid vacation. Not good. So thanks, Nick, and I apologize for whatever your second question was in there. If I skipped it, I didn't mean to. Some more feedback about the Malaysian Airline incident. Let's see, how are we doing here? 149. Been talking for a while, which is normal. Chris writes, "Hi, Captain Jeff. I think the largest contributing factor to the confusion on this crash loss, who knows, is the lack of proper communication between various governments, agencies, and especially the news media." Bingo! Let me see if I can find a sound effect, like a chime or something. No, but I can do this. You win the prize, Chris. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Lack of communication. How many times have I talked about that on this show? Whether it's communicating with your flight attendants, communicating with your passengers, communicating with air traffic controllers, communicating with your fellow crew members. You know, you get the idea. Governmental agencies, yeah, they're pulling stuff out of their rear ends. I don't know where they're getting this information from. And then, of course, the media. I'm not even going to talk about that. There are a ton of people trying to coordinate searches of thousands of square miles of land and ocean. Each false lead or missed communication from a news agency, company involved, or even military radar operations team can have a profound effect or impact on the limited resources available for the search operation. The basic facts that we know are when the transponders stopped functioning, whether through damage or turned off, we know that there was a brief radar blip after that point, which, if it proves to match the radar signature of the plane in question, means the plane was in the air 45 minutes longer and only dropped 5,000 feet. Well, we're not really sure exactly if that's right or not either. However, that is speculative. Yes, that's the key word. We also know that engine data information stopped being transmitted to Rolls-Royce about 15 to 30 minutes prior to the flight disappearing off radar. Okay, that makes sense, again, because it goes through ACARS. That data gets transmitted every 30 minutes. That may be the case for that particular airplane. Who knows? The only other facts known are about the passengers, minus the fact that several had stolen passports. What we don't know is if the plane traveled somewhere else, if it broke up in the atmosphere, if it landed in the water, or if it safely landed somewhere under unknown command. I think you basically covered it. The frustrating thing is the news agencies love jumping on any lead they can without first vetting and what they can get. Very frustrating. God bless Chris Weitzel in Connecticut. Yes, Chris, I couldn't have said it better. Excellent points you've just made. Thank you for your input. Now let's listen to Tom. He has a question about engine run-ups. Tom, go ahead. For some reason, Tom's not talking. Why? All right. Let me go over here then, see if I can find it in my folder. No, Tom, sorry. I'll play your feedback on the next episode. Lee writes, oh, yeah, this is an interesting one. Now, for those of you watching and listening, we need your help. Okay, especially you mechanics out there. This is what I received via Facebook from Lee Davis. She writes, I come to you in absolute desperation and hoping you can help. My question, how long is an airline company, based in the United Kingdom in this case, but assuming there are worldwide regulations, how long are they required to keep maintenance records? I recently paid for an upgrade at the airport, economy class to business class. Upon boarding the plane, I was told my assigned business class seat was broken and I'd have to go back to economy. I immediately inquired about a refund and was told it would be taken care of. Don't worry about it. Well, it never was. Now the airline is claiming they can't verify my case as the maintenance records for August of 2013 have been destroyed and therefore no refund will be issued. I am absolutely distraught over this due to their own negligence and incompetence. I'm now fighting to get my money back. Sorry for the long explanation, but I thought a bit of background might be helpful. Thank you very much for your time and also an excellent Facebook page and podcast service. Okay, well, thank you, Lee. So I wrote back and said, I'm waving the BS flag on this one. I think what happened here was that somebody from customer service or customer no service for this airline said, well, I'll just make something up. I don't really know if this is right or not, but yeah, unfortunately, those maintenance records were destroyed, so we can't verify that the seat was not available or broken. So sorry, you paid for an upgrade to business class. You had to sit in economy, and you can say bye-bye to that extra money. Well, again, I think that is a story. I don't think that they destroy maintenance records. How long ago was that? August of last year. September, October, November, December, January, February, March. 7 months ago? I'm not buying it. How about you? I know I have mechanics listening. Is that true? I mean, could that possibly be right, a cabin discrepancy write-up being purged from the maintenance records within not even a year? I don't think so. So, Lee, I told Lee that I would ask my airline pilot guy community, and we would figure out what was going on here and give her some ammunition so that she can get her deserved money back. So, thanks, Lee, for writing and listening. Bill Hunter from Cincinnati writes, just a quick question. While listening to the last episode, one of your listeners asked about potholes, which got me thinking. With this bad winter dumping all of the snow and ice, I was wondering what airports use to clear the ice off of the runways and taxiways. I'm assuming that they do not use salt since it is so corrosive, so could you shed some light on what they do use? He says, if you find yourself in Cincinnati, don't hesitate to look me up. We are known for our brewing history, so there are just a few places to find a good beer. Okay, well, Bill, I know that most of the, well, you know, at runways they both use mechanical snow and ice removal procedures and chemical treatments, and a lot of times a combination of both. I'm not sure if it's salt-based or if it's some other kind of chemical. I suspect it's some kind of a chemical, not salt, but I don't know. I can tell you the guy to ask. And Matt Dolan, if you're listening, Matt Dolan was like one of the first people that I ever had an airline pilot guy meet up with. He's in Des Moines, and this is his specialty. I mean, he goes around and speaks at conferences all over the country, maybe all over the world, talking to cities about their snow removal and ice removal requirements. And Matt, help me answer this question. I did a little bit of research. I wasn't able to find any definitive information about runway-specific snow removal procedures per se. So, but I think that Matt would be the guy to answer this question. So, Matt, help me out if you're listening. Okay. If not, then hopefully somebody else will be able to help answer that question. I think it's mostly mechanical methods, though, of removing snow and ice. Okay. Catherine sent me some voicemail, and I probably don't have it anywhere, so I'm going to hit this button and hope for the... Oh, I know it's not going to work because I'm not connected to the internet with my iPad, so I'm going to go over here, see if I can find her feedback. I'm stalling. Here we go.
Hi, Captain Jeff. It's Nick Dawson back in Atlanta, Georgia. Also, I wanted to do some more audio feedback for you. There are 3 questions for you today. First of all, I was just wondering, at what point do you go around when you come into land because of too much ground effect, if any? Second is, what type of calculations do you do or perform, rather, to see how much auto brake you need to land? Does air traffic control we have a request to exit sooner than expected or use falling, so forth? And my last question today is, what is the most easiest and most difficultest approach at landing you have done anywhere in the whole entire world? So thank you for your awesome podcast and looking forward to your answers on this. Take care. Bye.
Well, first of all, Nick, I'm sorry that I called you Catherine. I was using the, for those of you out there who have Google Voice, you know that I was looking at the computer transcript of Nick's voice message, and you just heard it with me, but this is what Google Voice translated or did for the transcript. Hi, Catherine. Says it's me, a call as soon as I can in a plan so-so. I want to do the sound module feedback for you because questions for you today. Bye, Voss Tussle. So you get the idea. Not a good way of, you shouldn't rely on Google Voice's computer voice translation. So sorry, Nick. Nick Carson, he usually sends me email feedback, but this is his second voicemail feedback, and you can send voicemail feedback as well to my Google Voice feedback line, area code 304-997-4568 or 304-99-PILOT. I think that the better way to go is to use the SpeakPipe app if you have the capability on your computer to use your built-in microphone on your computer or whatever, and you can find that at Airline Pilot Guy / contact me, I think, and use that. That usually works out to be a little bit clearer, easier to understand. And of course, if you have an iPad or you have an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever, Windows phone, usually they have some kind of a voice memo app that you can record and then attach it as an email. That's the best way, I think, to send me audio feedback. But anyway, regardless, I got the gist of what you were saying, Nick, and let me see if I can answer your questions. Go around. At what point do you make the decision to go around when the ground effect is more than you were expecting? Ground effect is kind of and of course I didn't look this up, so I'm kind of pulling this from where is that kind of a cushioning that you get when you're coming in for landing. And I won't say too much about this because I'll probably say something wrong. This would be like me on CNN or Fox News Channel answering a question. Well, Captain Nielsen, what do you think about ground effect? Can you explain to us what that is? And then I would go, huh? So But basically, ground effect is a kind of a cushioning the wings, and you get closer to the ground, and you get into this effect that kind of cushions your rate of descent, and it happens in different degrees based on different airplanes and their style of wing, and if it's a high aspect ratio wing or a low aspect ratio wing, etc. But I think I can answer this in a general way and say that anytime that you're coming in for landing and you realize whether you flared too high or you're in excessive ground effect or whatever, and you think it's going to be an unsafe thing to continue to land, or you think that you're not going to have enough remaining runway to land and decelerate safely, then you go around. And that's one of the hardest things for us to do because we're so mission-oriented as pilots. We're going to land. That's what we're doing here. We're coming in. We're going to land. We're going to land. We're going to land. And we really shouldn't think that way. We should always be coming in going, we're going to go around. We're going to go around. Oh, I can actually land. That should be the way we think. But again, as humans, we're goal-oriented, mission-oriented. We're coming in, aim point, airspeed, aim point, airspeed, aim point, airspeed. We're going to land, we're going to land. And then something happens and you go, huh? What? What's going on? This does not compute. I need to go around. And sometimes that leads to accidents and problems. So, and again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a report by a Canadian research company that talks about go-arounds and the fact that we're kind of screwing up as pilots. We're not really planning properly for go-around procedures, and that's why we do practice them when we go to the simulators. But we should always be thinking mentally, or how else would you think, about going around, and so that when that is the correct decision to make, you are ready for it. You know what to do. Brakes. What determines what auto brake setting we use? And I very rarely use the auto brakes on the jet that I fly. I know a lot of people like using auto brakes all the time. I will use auto brakes if I need to, if it's like really, really slick, like I've had to do a couple times this year, land on runways that are, the braking action reports are really, really not good. And then I always say, okay, auto brakes max. And the reason why you use auto brakes is that the system will apply the brakes simultaneously and evenly, as opposed to manually do it. You could actually be pushing a little bit more on your right rudder pedal, right brake or left brake. You're not getting as effective stopping performance if you're doing it manually. And that's just a general statement. That's not always really true, but there are a lot of airplanes out there that either the company policy is, or maybe that type of airplane, it's just like that's common. You always use auto brakes. Some airplanes have multiple settings, numbers they use for auto brake settings. On the airplane that I fly presently, we basically have min, medium, and max, and really the only ones that we're told to use are medium or max. And again, if braking action reports are such that it's really slippery, then I'm going to use auto brakes and in their maximum setting. But you have to think about, and this also is something that we think about as far as our landing flap setting. The airplane that I fly right now, we can use flaps 28 or flaps 40 degrees for our landing flap setting. The bigger flap setting, the 40 flaps, is what I prefer to do most of the time, and that's because that allows me to fly at a slower speed. Remember, the reason we put flaps out is to change the shape of the wing so that the wing creates lift, but you can go slower and create the same amount of lift. And the lower your velocity, the less energy you have to dissipate once you land. And why would we go for a bigger flap setting and maybe a higher brake setting going into a particular location? Well, it could be LaGuardia and it has a short runway. It could be somewhere where the terminal is close to where the beginning part of the runway you're landing on, and you don't want to have to taxi 2 miles back to the terminal. A bunch of different things you consider, but I'd say the big things are the condition of the runway, the braking action reports, whether it's slippery, cluttered with snow and ice, and to a lesser extent and the length of the runway, not to a less extent, and then also to a lesser extent the logistics of how far your landing roll is going to take you away from where you want to go after you land. As far as the controllers, they don't really specify, oh, you need to Acme, you need to make sure that you use maximum braking on this landing. The only time that a controller might advise something, it would be like a land and hold short clear, not a land and hold short, land and, yeah. So a procedure we call LAHSO, L-A-H-S-O, where they have a crossing runway, and so, on your airport diagram, it says the runway is 10,000 feet long, but there's a runway that crosses it maybe 7,000 feet long, and land and hold short clearances are in effect, and they may actually give you clearance to use that runway, but you have to promise that you're going to stop before the intersection of that other runway, so because they have simultaneous operations going on, and so that effectively decreases the length of the runway. Excuse me. And finally, my glasses back on. Easiest approach and most difficult approach. Well, for me, the easiest approaches, I don't know. That's a hard question. I'll have to think about that one, Nick. Remind me if I forget, but I'm going to think about that. I really didn't write this down. I do enjoy visual approaches. I find them pretty easy, but I know that there are people out there flying airliners that visual approaches are not easy. They don't like them because they never fly them. They never practice them. They are uncomfortable with them because you have to do all the thinking on your own, and a lot of it has to do with experience, and a lot of it has to do with how you were trained. But I think for me, visual approaches are the easiest approaches. Maybe another easy approach are ILS approaches, because you have electronic guidance, both lateral guidance and glide slope information. Probably the more difficult approaches, I would say, are the ones where you have to do some kind of a non-precision approach procedure. So you don't have that electronic glide slope or RNAV glide slope or whatever to give you that vertical information. So you have to be a little bit more careful. Probably the approaches into mountainous terrain and that kind of thing are a little bit more difficult. Again, I'll try to formulate a better answer, Nick, but thank you, as always, for your feedback and your questions. Okay, well, we're at the 2-hour point, so it's about time to wrap this thing up. I still have a bunch of feedback to go, as you know. Always do, but got to stop sometime, don't I? And I got to eat. It's already 7 o'clock now, so got to get up early in the morning. So, hope everybody enjoyed the live broadcast. I know if you're listening, most of the people listen to the show by audio downloadable podcast, and they have no idea, or maybe have no interest in what I'm talking about right now, so I apologize for that. But as I said, if you happen to see a tweet or a Facebook post from me in the future and I say, hey, I'm about to turn the camera on and record my show, come and hang out with a bunch of us here. Let's see how many people we have in there now. About 14. At one point I looked down and we had like 21 people in the chat room, so that's kind of cool. Let's see, if you want to send in feedback, don't send me too much. You can do that by going to, or send them the feedback to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. Let's see, I have a feedback form on the website that you can use. SpeakPipe, audio feedback, the Google Voice number. Let's see, oh, just a whole myriad of ways. A lot of people comment on YouTube. I don't always see those. Bunch of different ways to send feedback. And let's see, just some news about the website. Obviously, those people that are watching me on the Airline Pilot Guy live page, you know that's new. I do have an Amazon link. If you're going to buy something on Amazon and you don't already have another charitable organization that you want to use to get, to help them with fundraising and such, then you can click on that the button and make your Amazon purchase, and I'll get a couple % off your purchase. If you're buying a car or something like really expensive, I urge you to use the Amazon link. Let's see, what else? Well, I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but oh, I also signed up with Foursquare. A lot of people have been bugging me to do that. So again, on the website, on the right column, you can, or if you have a Foursquare app, you can invite me to be a friend, and you can kind of keep track of where I am. And if you go to the website right now, on the right side, there's like a little map that shows you basically in general where I am. I think right now it says I'm in the Hilton Hotel in Miami, Florida. And that's right, I actually am. And that's about it. So you can find this podcast on iTunes. Go to the website, hit the play button there. You can find me on Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, all kinds of places. So finally, again, I appreciate you watching and listening, sending feedback. Your support is greatly appreciated. And as always, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care and God bless. All right, now I'm going to hit stop record on my H2, but I'm still online. And Fred the pilot is in Hilton, San Antonio. Hey, how's the San Antonio? How's the weather over there? Inge, thanks for hanging out with us. She's in the Netherlands, Groningen, right? Let's see, Sport Pilot. All your approaches are visual, right? Lee, I'm not sure which Lee this is. Father Corey, hey, Father Corey. We need to have you on our Catholic Weekend show sometime. Are you up for that? We've been talking about it for a long time. We just always forget to ask you. Dr. Steph, always a pleasure to have you present. And let's see. Here, I'm gonna try something here, Dr. Steph. Now I have to think about it. Osteopathy. How'd I do? Osteopathy. I was mispronouncing that. Let's see. Yeah, I like the live feed. It's I do it for the other podcasts that I do, and as I mentioned earlier, that it's not quite so daunting when I'm on a panel show because I can kind of keep track of what you guys and gals are saying. But when you're doing a solo show like this, it's easy to be distracted. Yeah, Frick, you're over there in South Africa, right? Cessna 152 pilot. Have you ever had any layovers in Albany? It's been a while since I've been in Albany, but we do occasionally lay over there. But I think the last time I was there, I think we lay over now in downtown, but I think the short layovers are like right at the airport. I don't know, actually. It's been a while. I don't normally get the Albany layovers. Thanks, Lee. I hope I feel better, too. I'm feeling better today. And what else? Inge has a link here. Best sour beers, Lost Abbey's side project, Jester, Crooked, Stave, Bourne, Boone, Russian River, New Belgian, best beer review. Wow, that is some URL. Inge, could you get a longer one? Holy cow. First class on Acme. Nice. Fred's a fractional pilot. What do you call those things? Fractional ownership. Basically, he flies biz jets and do a lot of positive space flying, I guess. First class. Oh, that's nice. We never get first class when we deadhead. And I'm lucky if I don't get a middle seat. I'm not complaining. Australia, sport pilot, awesome. Hello, down under. Wow, what time is it in Australia? 7:11 right now, East Coast. I'm going to use my iPhone app, World Clock. Is it the same time zone as Singapore? That's 12 hours ahead. Here, I'll put in where down under. I guess it depends on where you are. I'm going to say Sydney because that's what everybody thinks of, right? Like in the United States, everybody's in New York. Sydney, it's 10:12. Oh, that's not bad. That's a decent hour right now. 10:12 a.m. Sweet. Hey, Matt. Hello from California. Glad you love the live podcast. I do too. And you know, the only limitation is, and I think some of you mentioned it. I kind of took a quick peek at the chat room at one point. People were complaining about the bandwidth. That may have something to do with the fact that I was using my Evernote app on the same computer that was doing the video on the Hangout, and I think that it has more to do with my computer's processor than it does with the bandwidth that I have available here. And excuse me, wow, that was rude of me. I apologize. So that's why I kind of started shifting over to my iPad and using that to look at the Evernote app and play files and that kind of thing. Although I wasn't very well prepared for that. That's why I kept having to look over to the side, trying to make sure I was speaking into the microphone. So I'll be fiddling around with this, seeing what works better. And but I think when I stopped using the Evernote app on the machine, things started improving. So, but anyway, that's the limitation, I think, with doing these live hangouts in hotel rooms. Because as yesterday I mentioned that I tried to do it in Orlando. I was at the Rosen Plaza, and it said I had great bandwidth, but it wouldn't connect to Google Hangouts. I don't know why. It just wouldn't work. I think it was God telling me, you need to go just like get something to eat and go to bed, get some sleep. So I did. Let's see here. Well, I hate to end. Well, I don't have to. You guys can keep chatting all night long if you want. This is an open chat room. I will start editing the podcast. Maybe start editing tonight, but probably not until tomorrow. So the audio podcast will be out probably tomorrow, maybe Thursday. And the nice thing about doing the there's quite a delay here. Sport Pilot in Australia is finally saying it's 10 a.m. in Australia, so it's probably about a 2-minute latency here. Yeah, so the nice thing about doing the Hangouts is that it's pretty much all, the video's already done. I mean, I used to do the video using my iPad and then putting it into iMovie and then adding sounds like outros and that kind of thing and doing some splicing and doing an intro and all that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of extra work. And then the longest part of the process is getting the laptop to render the video. That literally takes hours, and then it comes up with a huge multi-gigabyte file, and then I have to upload that to YouTube, and then it just takes another couple of hours to upload to YouTube. So now, if I can get a Google Hangout or use the Google Hangout feature, it's already up. It's already uploaded. I don't have any editing to do. Maybe a little bit. I'll go in there and trim it so that I start when I started the show and probably end when I ended the show, and maybe put some annotations in there. But for the most part, it's much easier than the other method. Let's see. We did a new Secrets of Once Upon a Time podcast today, Jeff. We did push. Okay. Hey, if you guys are interested, you probably saw Inga post that there. The StarQuest Production Network, the network of which I'm an affiliate podcast, has a lot of great shows, and one of them being a fan podcast, popular culture podcast, the ABC series Once Upon a Time. I don't watch it myself, but I know a lot of people that do, including my own kids, and they love it. And they do a great show on SQPN called The Secrets of Once Upon a Time. Inga, you're on that show, right? I think she is. Yeah, I know. Cough button. I need a cough button. Sorry, sport pilot. And yeah, you know what? I need to go. I need to find something to eat myself. I still haven't even taken off my uniform. I did take off my wings, so you couldn't tell what company I fly for. And but I'm still basically in my uniform. So I walked into the room and took my tie off, took my wings off, set all this up, and hit record. And now I need to get a little bit of something to eat and get ready to hit the sack. And tomorrow I'll fly up to Kennedy and then back here to Miami. So only 2 legs tomorrow, which is nice. And I think that the weather is going to be more favorable than it was today. It was really, really turbulent today on the East Coast. I mean, constant, moderate turbulence. It was pretty bad. And so I'm hoping that that whole system has moved enough to the east that it's not going to bother us so much tomorrow. And get back here again tomorrow afternoon about little after 2 o'clock. So, and then Friday, go back up to New York and then to Atlanta. And then not Friday, Thursday. I'm so used to flying Tuesday through Friday. This is Monday through Thursday. So, anywho, I guess it's time for me to sign off. And what kind of language are you guys speaking? Was Nagel Amdi Tal Biji Rondik? Is that Dutch? Oh my gosh. Yeah, if you're interested in Once Upon a Time, it's onceuponatime.sqpn.com. If you want to listen to those fine, upstanding folks talk about the popular culture series Once Upon a Time. Cough button. Okay. Oh, South African. That's what that is. Okay. Afrikaans. Thank you. Okay, kids. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too. And I will see you again, and I'll try to keep doing this hangout thing. I like it. And maybe we can do some kind of an interactive thing sometime, so we can get your input, more than just your chat input, but maybe audio, video input as well. That'd be kind of fun. So until we meet again, let me see if I can get this right. Clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds above 1,000 feet. Take care and God bless.
That was terrible! Horrendous! I'm offended! I'm appalled! So what are we gonna do? Well, what else? Email it to everybody we know! Good idea.